You've seen the rescues. You've watched Hellboy drag a buried dozer out of a creek bed like it weighed nothing. You've seen Wrecker Rick stay completely calm while pulling off recoveries that would make most people walk away from the industry entirely. And you've probably hit subscribe, watched another video, and never once stopped to ask, who's actually running this thing? Because here's what the channel doesn't spell out. Murphy's Diesel has 3 locations spread across northern Arizona. It has a merch store, a YouTube channel with 428,000 subscribers and over 67 million views, a recovery operation that spans from Flagstaff to Phoenix, and a crew that doesn't stop. That kind of operation doesn't hold together on its own. Someone is managing the customers, ordering the parts, handling the finances, keeping the schedule from falling apart while Rick is hours deep into a recovery in the Arizona desert. That someone is Nikki Murphy, co-owner since day one, the woman whose name is on the business just as much as his is. And yet most people watching can't tell you a single thing about her. That changes right now. Most people who follow Murphy's Diesel know her as @Mr. Reckerick. That's her TikTok handle, and on the surface it sounds exactly like what you'd expect. The wife, tagged onto her husband's identity, showing up in the occasional video to keep things entertaining. But that handle is misleading, because the role Nikki Murphy actually plays in this operation has nothing to do with being a sidekick. She is a co-owner of Murphy's Diesel, not a silent partner, not someone who handles a few emails while Rick does the real work. She runs the business side of an operation that now spans 3 physical locations, Ash Fork, Flagstaff, and Holbrook, plus an online store, a YouTube channel, and a recovery service that fields calls from all across the state of Arizona. Customer relations, parts ordering, scheduling, finances, administration, that's Nikki's world. And in a business like this one, where a single bad week of scheduling can cost you a major contract, where parts need to be on hand before a job starts, where customers stranded on the side of a highway need someone to answer the phone and actually solve their problem, that role is not a background role. It's the difference between a business that scales and one that collapses under its own weight. What makes her story interesting is precisely the fact that she doesn't chase the spotlight. Rick is the face. He's the one steering Hellboy through terrain that has no business being driven on. He's the one the camera follows. Nikki works in a different direction entirely, inward, into the mechanics of keeping the whole thing functional. And the results speak for themselves. A business founded in 2014 that now holds down 3 northern Arizona locations, runs free recoveries across the state as a community service, and built a YouTube audience of over 428,000 subscribers without any prior online presence is not an accident. That kind of growth requires someone making smart decisions behind the scenes consistently for over a decade. She does appear on social media. She shows up in TikTok content alongside Rick, and the dynamic between them, genuine, unscripted, occasionally involving disagreements over a 75-ton rotator, is clearly part of what makes the channel feel real rather than produced. But even in those moments, she's not performing for an audience. She's just there, the way she's always been there, doing the work that doesn't get the view count but makes the view count possible. In 2014, there was no YouTube channel, no merch store, no Hellboy, no 67 million views. There was just a family-owned towing and recovery operation starting out in northern Arizona, in a region where the desert does not forgive mistakes and the competition for trust is earned slowly, job by job. Building a business like Murphy's Diesel from the ground up is not the kind of story that comes with a clean narrative arc. There's no single breakthrough moment, no viral video that changed everything overnight, because in 2014 the channel didn't exist yet. What existed was the work. Recovery calls in brutal heat, diesel repair in a part of the country where the terrain is genuinely hostile, and the distances between towns make every job harder than it looks on paper. Rick handled the mechanical side. Nikki handled everything that kept the business alive around it. And together they started building something that most small operations in that industry never managed to build: a reputation. One of the earliest and most deliberate decisions the Murphys made was to offer free recoveries. That's not a standard business move. Towing and recovery is a service industry, and most operators charge for every call. Choosing to go out and pull someone's vehicle out of a canyon or drag a stuck truck off a desert trail without billing them repeatedly across a wide stretch of Arizona is a statement about what kind of operation you want to be. It built goodwill in communities that remembered it. It built the kind of word of mouth that no marketing budget can manufacture. And critically, it built an identity for the brand that would later translate directly to YouTube content that audiences genuinely connected with. That identity didn't come from Rick alone. The decision to run a business with that kind of ethos, one that absorbs the cost of free recoveries as a regular part of operations, requires someone on the financial side who understands what it costs and signs off on it anyway. That's not a small thing. Running the numbers on a business that intentionally gives away a portion of its services and still growing that business to 3 locations over the following decade requires a level of operational discipline that rarely gets talked about when people discuss what made Murphy's Diesel what it is. By the time the YouTube channel launched in February 2022, the foundation had already been laid for 8 years, and that foundation had 2 names on it. February 7th, 2022. That's the date the Murphy's Diesel YouTube channel went live. By that point, Rick and Nikki had been running a multi-location towing and recovery business across northern Arizona for 8 years. They weren't new to the industry. They weren't figuring out the basics. They were an established operation with a real customer base, a real reputation, and a real payroll to meet every single week. And they decided to add a YouTube channel on top of all of it. That decision is easy to underestimate in hindsight. When a channel grows to 428,000 subscribers and 67 million views inside 3 years, it looks inevitable. It wasn't. Going on YouTube as a towing and recovery operation in 2022 meant entering a space that already had established names, already had audiences locked in, and already had a clear idea of what that kind of content was supposed to look like. Standing out required something those other channels didn't have. Murphy's Diesel had 2 things working in its favor: genuine recoveries that no script could replicate, and a business infrastructure solid enough to absorb the added pressure of content creation without breaking. That second part is where Nikki's role became even more critical, because producing a YouTube channel at the volume Murphy's Diesel operates is not a casual side project. It means Rick is regularly out on recoveries that double as filming operations, which means he is not always available to deal with the day-to-day demands of running 3 locations. Scheduling doesn't pause because the camera is rolling. Customer calls don't stop because there's a recovery underway in Tuba City. Parts orders don't place themselves. Every hour Rick spends behind the wheel of Hellboy filming content that eventually reaches millions of people is an hour that the business backend has to run without him. Nikki made that possible. The channel's growth rate tells its own story. Over 67 million views across 431 videos in just over 3 years is not the result of luck or algorithm. It's the result of consistent output. And consistent output in a business like this one requires a level of operational stability behind the scenes that most viewers never think about. The content looks effortless because the structure supporting it is solid. What the audience sees is Rick, calm as ever, doing things with a wrecker truck that seem physically impossible. What they don't see is everything that had to be organized, scheduled, and held together to make sure that truck was fueled, ready, and on location in the first place. At the center of the Murphy's Diesel brand is a truck that barely looks real. Hellboy started life as a 1969 Peterbilt 352, a classic cab-over-needle nose, and was taken apart and rebuilt from the ground up into something the off-road recovery world had never quite seen before. Shortened frame, military-spec axles, a heavily customized wrecker unit, and enough winching power to handle recoveries that would stop most operators dead in their tracks. Rick and the crew built it with one stated goal: to create the world's largest off-road wrecker. And whether or not that title is officially certified, the machine itself is hard to argue with. But Hellboy is a symbol as much as it is a vehicle. It represents what Murphy's Diesel has become, an operation that doesn't do things halfway. And that same philosophy runs through every other part of the business Nikki helps manage. The 3 locations, Ash Fork, Flagstaff, and Holbrook, cover a significant stretch of northern Arizona. Each one is a full-service operation offering towing, heavy recovery, diesel repair, and roadside assistance around the clock. The geography of that region is no small thing. Northern Arizona is not a gentle landscape. It's high desert, canyon country, long stretches of interstate, and terrain that puts serious vehicles in serious trouble on a regular basis. Holding down 3 locations across that corridor, staffing them, equipping them, and keeping them operational 24 hours a day is a logistical undertaking that requires constant management. Beyond the physical locations, the revenue picture for Murphy's Diesel extends in several directions. The YouTube channel generates ad revenue across 67 million views and counting. The merch store runs alongside it, converting an audience of 428,000 subscribers into a customer base for branded gear. Sponsorships and partnerships layer on top of that. And the core business, towing, recovery, and diesel repair, continues to operate independently of all of it, serving customers who may have never watched a single video. Estimates put the combined net worth of Rick and Nikki Murphy somewhere in the range of $2 to $5 million. Those figures are unverified. They're a private family business with no obligation to publish financials, but the scale of what they've built across 3 locations, a functioning online store and a YouTube channel growing at the rate theirs is, suggests the business is considerably more valuable than it might appear from the outside. And behind all of those numbers, someone has to know what they mean. That's Nikki. For someone who runs the back end of a multi-location business, Nikki Murphy is more visible online than most people in her position would be. She shows up in TikTok content regularly. She appears alongside Rick in videos that pull back the curtain on what daily life at Murphy's Diesel actually looks like. Not the polished recovery footage, but the quieter moments between jobs, the conversations that happen in the cab of a truck, the kind of content that reminds an audience there are real people behind the operation. And that visibility matters more than it might seem. The off-road recovery niche on YouTube is crowded with channels that feel like highlight reels. Dramatic rescues, big machines, heavy equipment doing impressive things. Murphy's Diesel has all of that. But what separates it from the rest of the pack is the sense that you're watching a real family run a real business. Nikki is a significant part of why that comes across. When she's on screen, the dynamic shifts. It becomes less about the truck and more about the people. That's not a small contribution to a channel's identity. The moments that tend to stick with audiences are the ones that feel unscripted. A TikTok video of Rick and Nikki disagreeing over the 75-ton rotator set to AC/DC racked up hundreds of thousands of views, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. 2 people who have been building something together for over a decade, still in the middle of it, still having the same conversations that any business partnership and any marriage produces. That kind of content cannot be manufactured. It either exists or it doesn't. Their daughter Taylor has also appeared in family content, adding another layer to the picture Murphy's Diesel presents to its audience. This isn't a faceless brand. It's a family operation in the most literal sense, one where the kids grow up around the trucks, around the recoveries, around the work that defines the household. Taylor turning up in a TikTok challenge alongside her parents is a small detail, but it reinforces something the channel communicates consistently. The business and the family are not separate things, they're the same thing. What's notable about all of Nikki's on-screen presence is what it isn't. It isn't calculated. She isn't building a personal brand alongside the main channel. She isn't angling for her own content pipeline. She shows up, she's herself, and then she gets back to work, which, when you think about it, is exactly what she's been doing since 2014. There's a pattern in the off-road and automotive YouTube world that's almost impossible to miss once you notice it. The person with the wrench gets the credit. The person behind the wheel gets the subscribers. The person who shows up on camera, does the impressive thing, and narrates the whole experience gets the brand deal and the merchandise line. And everyone else, the people making sure the operation actually functions, stays largely invisible. Nikki Murphy is the clearest example of what that invisibility looks like in practice. Rick is the draw. He's the reason people click. The calmest tow truck operator in the business, out in the Arizona desert, doing things with a custom-built wrecker that most people in the industry wouldn't attempt. That persona built the channel, but a persona alone doesn't build 3 locations, a functioning merch store, a 24/7 recovery operation across one of the most geographically demanding regions in the American Southwest, and a YouTube presence generating tens of millions of views. That takes something different entirely. What Nikki brings to Murphy's Diesel is the kind of expertise that doesn't photograph well. You can't film someone approving a parts order or restructuring a scheduling system and expect it to go viral. You can't build a compelling thumbnail around the work of keeping customer relations tight across 3 separate locations simultaneously. The skills that hold a business like this together, financial management, logistics, administration, the daily problem solving that never makes it into a video, are exactly the skills that audiences never see and rarely think to ask about. But here's the thing, every recovery you've ever watched on the Murphy's Diesel channel was made possible by that invisible work. The truck that shows up to the scene is fueled, maintained, and dispatched because someone managed the operation that morning. The crew member who assists on that recovery was scheduled, paid, and equipped because someone handled the back end of a business that employs real people across 3 locations. The channel that filmed the whole thing and uploaded it to 428,000 subscribers exists because the business underneath it is stable enough to support it. Rick Murphy built a reputation as the calmest operator in the business. Nikki Murphy built the business that reputation lives inside. And in any honest accounting of what Murphy's Diesel actually is, where it came from, how it grew, and what keeps it running, those 2 things are not separate achievements. They are the same story, told from 2 different angles. One of those angles just doesn't get talked about enough. Murphy's Diesel did not become what it is by accident. 3 locations across northern Arizona, a YouTube channel that crossed 67 million views in 3 years, a recovery operation that regularly goes out for free because that's the kind of business Rick and Nikki decided to build back in 2014. None of that happens without 2 people who are genuinely good at very different things, working in the same direction for over a decade. Nikki Murphy is not a footnote in this story. She's not the supporting character the TikTok handle might suggest. She is half of the foundation that everything else sits on, the operational backbone of an empire that most people only ever see the surface of. The next time you watch Hellboy disappear into terrain that has no right being driven on, and you see Wrecker Rick do something that looks completely impossible with complete calm, remember what's behind that moment. Someone scheduled that truck. Someone managed that crew. Someone kept 3 locations running while the camera was rolling. That someone has been there since day one, and now you know exactly who she is.